I was in my 40s before I went to my first yoga class. I was in law school at the time, just battering my self-esteem further, and I thought, yoga, that'll be relaxing. Just a few poses into my first class and I was out of breath from yoga. And then during downward dog, I felt a bead of sweat form on the crown of my head. And that single bead of sweat did a swan dive onto the mat, echoing throughout the room, announcing to everyone that I was sweating from stretching. I was done with yoga. Until a few years later. I was taking clogging lessons. That's a whole nother story. But one of my classmates, and now friends, Martha, she owned the yoga studio next door, and she kept suggesting that I give it a try. So I said, oh, why not? But before I said why not, it was a year of, I'll tell you why not. I had seen the students after the classes. They looked like dish rags. This wasn't just yoga. This was hot yoga. I quit yoga because of a single bead of sweat. And now I signed up for a 90-minute class in a room heated to 105 degrees with humidity added. Nothing about me was built for that. I had also seen that the men wear just shorts. I don't go shirtless. As a kid, I used to wear a t-shirt swimming, and that's because I was a chubby kid and I was embarrassed about being fat. So my solution was to wear a t-shirt into the water because a wet t-shirt will hide everything. Every time I got out of the water, I had to peel the shirt away from my stomach. And now in my first hot yoga class, just one pose in and my t-shirt was completely soaked, so I peeled it off entirely, splashing the poor people next to me. And now if being shirtless weren't enough, there was a mirror along the entire front wall of the studio. Technically, it's there to help you with your poses, but that mirror just stared back at me in judgment. And it didn't stop with my body. It went for all of my insecurities, my fears, my self-worth. But before going into the heated room for the first time, they told me that the teacher will tell us what to do for each of the poses, and that the poses with the heat might get hard and I might want to leave the room, but that I should try to stay in the room, even if it means just lying on the floor, focusing on my breath. I spent a lot of time lying on the floor in a pool of my own sweat. And then rather than focus on my breath, I decided to catalog my every failure. I interrupted that monologue to join the instructor for the second to last pose. It's a spine twisting pose. You're seated on the floor with one knee bent up and then you twist over that bent leg. Well, I had to hoist my stomach up and over my thigh to twist. And not only was I aware that I was lifting my stomach, but I had to witness this play out in the mirror in front of me. Despite all this, I returned again and again. It wasn't love at first sight, it was hard, but Martha made it easy to return. Martha has an amazingly joyful spirit, and she created a welcoming place full of encouragement. And because I decided to return, I would slowly start to understand what a practice meant. Actually focusing on my breath, embracing mistakes, changing I can't with I'll try, accepting myself. So it was a few years into my practice. A class began like any other, except on this day when we got into half moon pose, Martha asked if we could reach just a little more, but reach without criticism. And each time she guided us into a pose, she'd ask us to do a little more, but without criticism. And I was finding that if I could quiet my thoughts, I could actually do that much more. And when we got to tree pose, Martha said, "Notice how beautiful this pose is." And with the mirror in front of me, I had to agree. You're standing on one leg, palms at your heart. It's a beautiful pose. And then Martha said, "Now notice how beautiful you are." My breath caught. I am beautiful. That felt so bold to think. Exhilarating. It felt new. Maybe I could be my own cheerleader. Unfortunately, the noisy thoughts in my head still make that so hard to hear, so I have to practice. Now, notice how beautiful you are.